point is that we had a shift, and then, but results were really did it, because that's when the Uyghur, in 2015, is when the Uyghurs start getting their health checks. They're getting their health checks, and then a year later, they're going into the camps, 2016. And I mean, this was, even if you didn't have actual results, anybody could put it together who was in the medical community. They ran out of Falun Gong. They started running out of Falun Gong at the right age.
So what do you mean they ran out of Falun Gong? Because there's tens of millions of people, presumably, who practiced at some point, at least in China.
Well, that's certainly it practiced at some point. But in 2013, Minghui reported 6 cases in 6 different provinces of the Chinese police coming into Falun Gong homes. Now, this was the first time that had happened. Came into the homes, forced their way in some cases, and took blood samples and DNA cheek swabs. So we even know back then you didn't tend to use the blood for the DNA. So you actually did a cheek swab. It was sort of a little more primitive. Well, why are they doing that? Because that is if you have a huge sample of a huge pool of blood types and people, living people waiting, the combination of blood, and I don't know quite why this is, but DNA and blood together gives you the perfect cross-matching or tissue typing, okay? I read that as a signal that not of Chinese being punitive, because the Chinese part, well, Beijing's always punitive. I read it as a signal they were starting to run out of people at that right age, at 28 years old, 29 years old, which is absolutely when they prefer to do this kind of organ harvesting. And that is plausible to me. Because
they were running out of people in the camps, and so they expanded their search to
exactly
people
right.
that they thought were Falun Gong practitioners, but just living in their homes.
That's right, exactly. But that indicates that is a significant shift. And there's also signs of an uptick at the same time in Tibetan organ harvesting, and even to some extent Christian organ harvesting. They're casting around for different other types. And the other problem they had was this was a very controversial issue. Falun Gong are all over the country, okay? So it was a very haphazard thing. I mean, you had the armed police and the PLA having nasty arguments in court over where this Falun Gong practitioner was going to go, under whose auspices. And then there were bribes to judges from the armed police.
Because there's a lot of money in this kind of transplantation, and they wanted a cut. Cut might be a poor choice of words.
Yes. No, I mean, it's about $500,000. I mean, a good, healthy person, not like me, but I think we could say Matt there.
How much am I worth? What's the value of my life, Ethan?
You're worth $500,000, but to a Japanese, you're worth $1 million, okay? $1 million, because they don't like to bargain, so the prices are doubled for them. And maybe for Germany, about $750,000. But for the average organ tourist, foreign organ tourist out there, you're $500,000. You got 2 good lungs, right? Right, Matt? Come on, Matt. How about your heart?
Kind of dark, but otherwise healthy.
How's your teeth? Oh, no, I'm sorry about that. Your eyes. Your eyes. You've got 2. Okay, I've got 15,000 numbers right here. I mean, blue
eyes too. Those will be a
no. We're just interested in the tissue. We don't care about your stupid blue eyes or anything like that, or how well you can see. We just need these tissues, okay? And we've got a pretty good liver and some decent kidneys. Because I don't remember you being a heavy drinker. I mean, I remember us going out for tea. Whatever tea Slurpees, whatever those things are called, milk tea one time, and I don't remember you being like, okay, let's mix some rum in with that or anything. So, okay. So bottom line is you're $500,000.
Wow. That's fantastic. My net worth has just gone up considerably.
Don't tell your wife.
I also think I see a way to pay off my student loan debts.
Let's not get into this because, there was a Falun Gong practitioner I was working with who wanted to sell a kidney to get a documentary going at one point. I said, no. A good publicity stunt, but bad for the cause. Bottom line is we are. Yes, it's very, very good money. But Falun Gong was distributed everywhere. And they're coming under a lot of heat. So what do you do? What is the smart thing to do? Well, you rationalize the system. Break it down so it's not 700 hospitals. Break it down till it's about 150 or 200 hospitals, which you can control. And make sure that you've got one single source. And what better source than Xinjiang, than the people of Xinjiang, the Uyghurs, okay? Because you can fence off that area, you can cut off the internet. They've done it before. They've been doing it for years. And you've got the greatest surveillance capabilities the world's ever seen in Xinjiang, and have your way. And then you can rationalize it. If you then have camps, and you can rationalize it so the camp is only allowed, say, 2.5 to take about a certain amount, to cull a certain amount of the population, about 2.5%, that are right in this age group of 28, 29, 25 to 35, then you have a very, very good system. And furthermore, unlike Falun Gong, who had a tendency to get out of China through all kinds of methods, all kinds of crazy methods, it's very, very, very hard for the Uyghurs to get out of the camps and out of Xinjiang at all. They never get passports.
Yeah, I know in Xinjiang they even have express lanes for organ transplants in the airports.
Well, that's a whole other thing about the new. I'd like to get into this, which is who's buying those Uyghur organs. But let's finish your thought here.
Well, I'm just saying. So basically you had the TTS had failed in its soft reform effort. It had stalled. Okay, but don't forget that Congressman Smith and other people, other politicians, had been trying to pass laws on this, or at least pass resolutions on this for some time. And the fact is they never got anywhere, or they would stop. And the reason they would stop was because they didn't really, truthfully, I don't think they felt comfortable. If the medical world wanted to engage with China, how do you go against that? If the medical world's saying, well, there's not really a problem here, or we think the problem's solved, it's very hard to make that next step. What happened is when the ISHLT stood up just last year, they put together a resolution basically saying we are having an academic boycott of China. The Chinese transplant surgeons are not allowed to publish in our journal, the most desirable journal in the entire field of heart and lung transplantation. That was very significant. That was a green light to Congress, or maybe waving a red flag, and whatever metaphor you want. This basically gave them permission to go ahead. And it's very significant. And I'm not even sure the ISHLT, the heart and lung transplant surgeons, understood how important it was that they did that they made that move. But it was a signal to Washington. It was a flare in the night sky. Go ahead. We'll back you. On balance, we're with you, right? And that change, that shift. Now, we don't know how the rest of the medical world's going to take it. We don't know if we'll see a rearguard action for the Transplantation Society at this point, or the WMA, or, it's hard to sort of follow the politics of this. But here's where I come in my own little cameo role. They invited me. So first, they make that resolution that nobody can publish in their journal. It was from China. Secondly, the bill passes the House, and I get an invitation to be the keynote speaker at the ISHLT annual conference in Denver. And that's like, okay, so you're inviting T-Rex to the conference because you think what could go wrong, right? It's like they know what I'm going to say. What am I going to say? It's like, you know what? I think China's really reformed, and we just have to keep on them a little bit. No, that's not what I'm going to say. I'm going to put the whole thing out there, and that's what I did. They gave me 30 minutes, and it was probably the most intimidating 30 minutes of my life because, we all have problems with certain characters. I don't know about you, Matt, or you, Chris, but David Kilgore, for example, could not stand other politicians. I would go to meetings with him, and if he felt like they were giving us the runaround, he would just explode. He'd just say, okay, the meeting's over. There's nothing to talk about here. And, I'd sort of sit there, and he'd leave. I'd sit there and say, well, let's try to talk a little bit. I was like that with doctors. When I felt there was resistance from a medical official, I'd be like, you know what, meeting's over. We have nothing to talk about here because you're not even listening. You're not willing to look at the evidence. So I had to repress that. and put together this talk, 30 minutes. And I wanted to also put in the whole field here, not just my own work, but everybody else's work too. It's a lot of stuff. And mainly for audience who's largely beginners on this. But I was also aware that this was the most consequential 30 minutes of my life. If I was ever going to have an impact, it's not sitting in front of Congress, giving a 5-minute talk. It's not being at the UN or the EU. It's there, that audience. They hold the cards. They have all the trump cards here. It is up to the medical world. It always has been. And so I felt incredibly tense, but I was just filled with joy to do this. Okay. Just filled with joy. I mean, this was a dream come true. And, if I perish from a heart attack tomorrow, it's okay. I mean, really, I've sort of done my bit at this point. It went very well. The reception to it was very, very good. That's all I can say. There is no tape. The whole thing was no virtual content, they said, for this entire conference. And I've looked around on the web. No, there's no bootlegs. There's a couple of pictures that made it into Twitter. That's it. However, I have the presentation for anybody who'd like to see it. I'm proud of that presentation. And this does indicate I was not pushing new policy there. I was rewarding them for what they'd done and making the point that they have the whip hand. Okay. It is up to them now to kind of carry this forward. And I think that's very significant that they will be. And as I say, I don't know the extent of the pushback in the rest of the medical world. We haven't seen it yet. But, if I told you this was going to happen a year ago, you'd probably think I was being very, very optimistic. And I'm as surprised to some extent as anyone by all these actions. And the fact that they've happened so quickly, one after the other. So that I find is a very hopeful sign, and something I did not expect.